Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Foundations of Faith with the On the Mountaintop series. Last week we talked about how lust can interrupt our relationship with Christ and can interrupt our relationship with others. Well, this week we're going to talk about retaliation. Okay, so we're kind of skipping over divorce and oaths. That's a story for another time. But we're going to be talking about retaliation and what that means for us. Now, we live in a world that thrives off retaliation. You see all the wars in the world are most likely a result of retaliation. During the Cold War, for instance, the United States and the USSR, they were in a standstill. And both of these countries secretly, not very secretly, were preparing for a war with the other one. This led to constant tension between the U.S. and the USSR because one never knew when the other one would attack. One never knew when they would shoot a nuke over. But they had this policy or this philosophy called MAD, or Mutually Assured Destruction. And that's if the U.S. shot a nuke, then the USSR would shoot a nuke. And that if the USSR shot a nuke, then the U.S. would shoot a nuke. And it just assured that both countries got destroyed, basically. So it said, if you attack me, then I'm going to attack you. If you blow me up, I'm going to blow you up. You look at the same thing for like Pearl Harbor, where whenever they bombed Pearl Harbor, we retaliated, right? So MAD, for whenever we get back to the Cold War, was based on the idea of retaliation. Retaliation, on the other hand, is something that God calls us to back away from. We're called not to retaliate, but we're just called to leave it alone. We're called to turn our other cheek, which we'll get into in just a second. We're called to love one another like He has loved us. So retaliation does not facilitate that love that He has showed for us. We are called to take the high road in situations that we want to drive straight through. Retaliation will only lead us further and further away from God because it facilitates violence and it makes it seem like it's okay to fight back or push back when someone does something. I'm not saying that, if a kid walks up to you or if, just to fight back, but what I'm saying is, we can't let violence take over and we can't let retaliation be the only thing on our mind. We have to let love be on our mind as well. The holy thing to do at this situation and in this time is to look at them and say, I forgive you for whatever you've done, no matter what they've done. Because trying to get your get back will only make it get worse. It will only make it worse. It'll make the situation worse. But also, it's not what we're called to do. So here in Matthew 5:38 through 42, it says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you." Okay, so there's a kind of a lot to unpack in that, a lot of symbolism and a lot of just analogies and stuff like that. But the first point that I have here is just let them, okay? It says let them. You see, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him to the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. So we always have something to say when someone says something to us, right? If JB over here wanted to talk trash about our fantasy football league, then I'm going to talk trash right back to him. We had our draft yesterday, and I'm not very happy with it. But, yeah, JB, don't be talking about fantasy football. So whether that's gossiping or whether that be questioning, we always have something to say when someone says something to us in a negative way. Someone kind of picks on us, if someone kind of, pushes us the wrong way, we have something to say. A lot of times, the speaking generates even more hostility in the future. It generates even more anger within the other party and our own party, and it causes tense situations to occur. It makes us more likely to retaliate in return because those tensions are boiling and boiling and boiling because they have something to say. If we keep stoking the fire, it's never going to go out, right? Humans can only handle so much before they burst. And it depends on who you are, what you've done, and like stuff like that. But humans can burst in different ways. You know, it could be in anger, it could be in frustration, sadness, whatever. But there's only so much humans can take. It is our nature to fight back. It is our nature to fight back against the people who try and tell us, you know, you do whatever. We try to, you know, retaliate back. But we need to let them. That's a hard ask. We need to let them. We need to let them talk. We need to let them yell. We need to let them do whatever they have to do because it's not worth sacrificing your peace for the peace of others. In these situations where there's hostility present. You see, I hate getting yelled at. I hate getting yelled at. It boils my blood. It doesn't matter what it's about. I hate getting yelled at. And oftentimes I yell back, you know, because I don't like people raising their voice at me unless I'm in trouble. If I'm not in trouble, don't raise your voice at me. I didn't do nothing. So it's our human nature to fight back or to retaliate. We are defensive people. We have been since the very beginning. Letting them do what they need to do not only allows the situation to de-escalate, but it allows us the opportunity to fulfill what God has called for our lives. So it allows us to sit there and turn your other cheek and let them do it. Because what good is going to come from violence from us? Nothing. God is not a violent God, which we'll get into in a little bit. But we have to fulfill what God has called us to do, and that is not to retaliate. We get so caught up in this idea that we got to get our get back that we forget the big picture. The big picture. We forget that we are called to love. Love is the big picture. Jesus is the big picture. We are called to give. We are called to model Christ, and I guarantee that Christ would turn his other cheek and let them hit him because there's no sense in violence. You see, we see what Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane where he let the soldiers take him. He let the soldiers take him knowing that death was on the other end of that. And yet he didn't retaliate. He had the power to do whatever he wanted to do. He could have sent them to Narnia if he wanted to. But he didn't. He let them. He let them. He did not retaliate because that's not who he is. Retaliation is not who he is. He let them soldiers beat him. He let them take him. He let them hang him on a cross knowing that he was going to die. Put him on that cross so he could die for our sins. Why? To fulfill what God had planned, which is what we have to do. He let them. God intended for us to emulate Jesus. You know, he was so quick to let them take him to a death that he knew was coming. So why are we so hesitant to turn our cheek to our brother or sister? Why are we so hesitant to just get it over with and take the high road? We want to get more and more deep in the drama. We want to get more and more deep in our own personal agenda that we don't turn our cheek and let it happen and let the retaliation and our anger in our hearts dissipate, but the love and the giving of our hearts increase. Why? I'm asking myself too. It's not just asking y'all. I'm asking myself. We have to start realizing that this life is not about what has been done to us and what we do to the person who has done to us. It is about showing humility and forgiveness no matter what, just as Jesus did. That's our purpose, to fulfill the law and fulfill what God wants for our lives, and that is to emulate Jesus and to follow him. So we have to show humility and forgiveness no matter what. See, Jesus shows us that forgiveness. He died on the cross for the sins of the world. On the cross, he said, Father, they do not know what they are doing. So he not only did he die for the sins of the world and forgive us, he died and forgave the people who hung him on the cross. There's no partiality when it comes to Jesus. He died when he didn't have to. He died for people who didn't believe in him. You see, we do not have to respond with humility and forgiveness, but we are called to emulate Jesus. And what did he do? He responded in humility and forgiveness. So if we're so concerned with what's going on and how these people are affecting us and how we want to just want to get back at them, forgive. Forgive rather than trying to get retaliation. It's so easy to fall into this idea that if I do not stop them, then it will never stop, kind of like a bullying situation. When we forgive others for what they have done, even if they are continuing in it, it generates questions. It generates questions of why are they not responding? Why are they not fighting back or trying to do anything? Why is there no reaction? Those moments are the moments in which we can tell exactly why we do not react. Jesus. Because we are followers of Jesus, we did not react to that. Because we are followers of Jesus, we turned our other cheek. Because we are followers of Jesus, we give the cloak too. Because we are followers of Jesus, we forgive. Because that's exactly what he did. He died for you and me. He died for the people who put him to death. He didn't retaliate. He forgave and he loved. And that's what we are called to do. So letting them generates questions that we are ready to answer. And that answer that we give them is Jesus. My second point here is give back. It's kind of a shorter one, but not only are we supposed to avoid retaliation and let them do whatever they need to do, we are called to give to them. We are called to give back to them. We are called to be generous and kind. We are called to show kindness and give to everyone, whether that is monetary value, if you see somebody on the side of the street, a homeless person, just, give them some change. Or if a person needs to borrow some money, or just time, If we're able to give time to one another and help people with stuff, whether that be homework, whether that be with a report at the office, whether that be helping JB pick a fantasy football team that's better than my own, we have to give back. We have to give back to our fellow brothers and sisters, whether they are following Christ or not, because that is what Christ did. Christ walked the earth in the areas that did not like him, like Samaria, for example, because he was a Jew, and walked and helped the woman at the well. He helped the woman caught in adultery. He helped everyone that he came across, and he didn't just be like, I got to help this person. What he did was he voluntarily did it. He voluntarily did it. He walked up to them, or they walked up to him rather. He didn't scoff at them. He didn't look at them and say, you're not clean enough for me. He looked at him, he healed him, and he said, sin no more. Sin no more. So it doesn't matter if there's people that don't follow Jesus. It doesn't matter if there's people that are poor, that are not poor, that are rich. If you want to emulate Jesus, you give back to them. Whether that be in time or money, give back. Give back. Giving is often associated with money, and which we will be talking about in 2 weeks in terms of giving. Giving can also be as simple as giving kindness. As simple as, just a, hey, you're doing good, you know? Or, give them that McChicken from McDonald's, you know? I would really like that if somebody gave me a McChicken from McDonald's. Just make sure it has pickle and ketchup only. But when we refuse to retaliate, we are showing that kindness. We are giving them kindness. People expect us to fight back. So when we don't, it surprises them. And it's kind of sometimes people get upset when you don't retaliate back. But other times, people are like, that's a surprise, kind of like a pleasant, confused surprise. But giving back in situations in which we could retaliate shows our character. It shows who is facilitating our character as well. It shows who is in our mind and who we are truly following. Because if we are willing to give back to the person who has done us wrong, it shows just how much Jesus is working in our lives. Jesus was crucified by the Romans, yet he still died to save their sins. He died for the people who reject him today, and he gave back when he could have retaliated, because that is his character, and that we are called to emulate his character. We are called to give back when people don't deserve it. We're called to show kindness when people don't deserve it, because that's who we are supposed to be. So take a moment next time retaliation crosses your mind and think it through. Love rather than retaliate, because we are called to emulate Christ, and Christ is love. God is love, not retaliation. So just to wrap this up, retaliation is a trap that is easy to fall into, right? It's so easy to fall into. We want to get our get back. We are wired to be defensive, and we are wired to be vengeful. That's human nature. But he is a merciful and forgiving God. Those two phrases are not a part of who God is. We are called to live by God and for God, which means living in his ways and emulating his character. Therefore, we should be merciful and forgiving people, because God is merciful and forgiving. We see it countless times throughout the Bible. I've seen it in my own life. JB's seen it in his own life. When you're saved, you understand that you were gonna die, but Jesus died so we didn't have to. Merciful and forgiving. When we base our actions off the character or on the character of God, our lives change and our attitudes follow suit. Our lives change and our attitudes follow suit. We're more joyful, we're more loving, we're more kind. All of them. We're going to crave mercy rather than retaliation. I'm going to say that again. We're going to crave mercy rather than retaliation. This is how we should be living. Merciful, loving people instead of retaliating. So let them talk. Let them be mad. But stay true to the character that God has called you to be. Because I promise you, living by God and living by his character is a whole lot more beneficial and a whole lot more peaceful than living a life of being on the edge, waiting for a next fight that's coming up, waiting to retaliate whenever someone does you wrong. I promise you that. So stay true to the character of God and give out kindness, because that is what we are called to do. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that you come back next week, where I believe we will be talking about loving your enemies, which kind of goes along with this week. So thank you for listening and watching. I'll see you next week.